call the meeting to order and start off with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move into working session. At this time, we'll receive an update on the NAC Together Master Planning Project and timeline.
Thank you, Chairman. Elena Helton, City Planner. Before we get started, I do want to introduce Remigio Casanova, if you'll raise your hand. Remigio goes by Remy. He's a senior at SFA. He's helping us out with the NAC Together project, assisting staff with outreach efforts and some administrative tasks, and we're really glad to have him. And this is some great experience with us, great experience for him, and an opportunity for us to kind of plug into the SFA community too. So we're really excited. So just wanted to introduce Remigio, or Remy, to the commission.
Glad to have you here with us.
Yep. All right, so today I'll be giving you guys an update on the NAC Together project. This is the city's community-wide long-range planning initiative. It includes an update to the city comprehensive plan. It also includes an update to the downtown master plan, including an I-69 corridor study and a housing needs assessment. And so all that together, we branded as the NAC Together project, because it's a mouthful to say comprehensive plan update and downtown master plan update and I-69 corridor study and all, So NAC Together kind of encapsulates all those initiatives into one brand, so we can communicate about it clearly, and when people see the brand and the logo, they can identify it with this project. So today we're going to be doing a couple different things. We're going to be reviewing, giving you an overview of the DTJ project team. We're also going to be looking at where we're at as far as the public engagement piece of this process. We're going to be reviewing some of the outreach activities that we've already done so far. Looking at some of the reports and deliverables that were included in your packet, and then looking at what are the next steps in the proposed project timeline. So on this screen, this is an image that shows all of the consultants and sub-consultants that are working on this process. DTJ is the primary consultant, including, the primary reps from DTJ are Chris Moore and Keith Walzak. Keith Walzak is our new project manager. He's actually on the call today. If you remember, Francois DeCoque was our project manager, but Keith is overseeing the project now, and we are very excited to have him. He comes with over 30 years of experience in private and public planning. He's worked on several long-range planning initiatives with cities and other governmental entities, and he's really hit the ground running, so we don't think we're going to miss a beat, and we're really excited to have him. And he's on the call just in case you guys really have any specific questions about some of the reports that have been delivered so far, about the process. Keith will actually be here this week. He'll be here when we have some committee meetings. So on Tuesday, we're having a downtown committee meeting, and Wednesday is our downtown committee meeting, and Thursday is our comp plan committee meeting, and they'll be here talking to the committees, introducing some new concepts and some new drafts of those plans, and so you'll have an opportunity to visit with them. We're actually hosting a meet and greet at the brewery on Wednesday at 5:30, so we invite you guys to come out. It's just going to be a casual kind of come and go for people to meet the project managers, ask them questions, get to know them, and just have a good time.
Hey, Keith, thanks for joining tonight.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody.
Likewise.
All right, we also have Civic Brand. They're really heading up the outreach efforts. KSA Engineering, they're a local engineering firm. They've actually done a lot of studies and worked on a lot of our current infrastructure plans. We have Catalyst, who's heading up the market economic analysis piece. We have Jay. She works on small area plans, zoning codes, regulations. She really is the local Texas expert on zoning code. We have Jody Short. He's the transportation planner and engineer working on the project. And then we have our local resource, Michael Delaney, who's also working on the project as that local contact. All right, so these first couple slides are going to be really looking at the engagement steps. So this engagement process really is a 4-phase process. Phase 1 is really that project setup, where the consultant team came here. They met the committees. They met some of our boards. We actually did a driving tour where we showed them some of our key assets. We also showed them some neighborhoods that probably needed a little bit more attention and focus, and just give them a broad kind of city tour to give them an idea of the character of Nacogdoches. We also were able to give them a lot of data so they could start that analysis, and we worked with them to launch our website, which is in English and Spanish. So that was kind of that first initial phase. The second phase is that initial engagement. So that's where we launch the Meeting in a Box. And the Meeting in a Box tool really is meant to be kind of like above and beyond our other engagement tactics. The Meeting in a Box allows people who aren't comfortable coming to public forums, who aren't comfortable speaking in public meetings, maybe wouldn't normally come to a community event, allows them to have a mini focus group in their own living room or with their local church group. And so it's just an alternative avenue to gather community feedback that maybe we wouldn't otherwise be able to get. We also have done several different focus groups. So looking to date, we've done, let's see, we've completed 7 focus groups so far. We're actually having a couple of additional focus groups this week. We're going to be having a housing focus group and a focus group that really covers arts, entertainment, and recreation. So it all comes together in kind of a tourism focus group where we're going to be talking to people about what we have in Nacogdoches that really are key assets in those categories, culture, arts, and recreation, and what are we missing? What are those gaps? The housing will focus on, just like it sounds, looking at what's our kind of current housing needs, what do we see that we can really fill in the gap for those needs, and we'll be talking to people in the real estate industry, we'll be talking to local developers, we'll be talking to property managers, and we've also invited some people that attended previous focus groups to come and sit in, and so we're hoping to get some good feedback on that. Focus groups we've already completed include neighborhoods, environment, diversity, transportation, and then we met with a number of our local government partners and nonprofit associations to look at, the issues that these different individual organizations dealing with common across these entities. And we found that there were actually a lot of common goals and a lot of common issues that these different organizations deal with, and looking at ways that we could partner together to be more efficient in the way that we serve our community. All right, this next one is phase 3 and 4. So this is really where we're at and where we're going. So on this slide, you'll see it says equitable engagement. What that means is that some groups require a little bit more effort to be engaged than others. We have our groups that typically will come to public forums, they'll come to public meetings, they'll come to these outreach activities, but there's a couple of groups that are historically hard to reach, and so sometimes we have to take extra efforts to make sure that those groups are represented in these engagement activities. So as part of this effort, we've been monitoring the demographics of the people that we've been speaking to, the demographics of people who have been participating in our surveys and online forums, and through that we can see are the responses that we're getting are those from people that represent Nacogdoches as far as demographics, age, sex, race, where they live in Nacogdoches. And so through that, we've been able to go back and say, you know what, we're actually missing a lot of responses from this group. How can we do better to engage that group further? And so we've been able to do that through this monitoring, and that's been really successful. We've also done a lot of man-on-the-street activities. So we've been at SFA football games, a lot of community festivals that were already taking place, like the Arts Festival and Dia de los Muertos. We piggybacked off of the SFA Hispanic Heritage Night. So trying to meet people where they are, activities that are already taking place where we know we're going to have good attendance, where we can take advantage and go ahead and get input from people when they have a captive audience. We've also done a number of online surveys. We've actually, over the weekend, we published the survey data online. So survey data from the Community Visioning Survey, the Downtown Survey, and the Transportation Survey, all of that is online and fully accessible, including the raw data. So anyone can go online and download and look at every single response that we got from every single one of those surveys. That was something the City Council specifically requested, so all of that's been online now. The next couple of topics we're going to cover on our online surveys are housing and economics, so that's still to come. We're also going to be doing some online surveys where we're collecting feedback on drafts of the plan. So the idea is to close that feedback loop and ask the community, do these recommendations reflect the responses that we got from those different engagement activities? So making sure that we're still on track and we're not way off base with those recommendations.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
How are you going to distribute the draft to get that feedback?
So all of the drafts we publish online. So nactogether.com, that's our project website. Everything that we are going to be distributing to the community will be on that website. And so you'll be able to download the full PDFs of draft plans. We'll also be distributing those to our commission and our different committees. And if someone wants to request a written copy, we'll print those as requested.
And those are going to be available at the end of this week, or at least 2 of them, I believe you said earlier?
No, I was talking about the survey data.
Okay.
So, but as part of that online survey in the future, we will have drafts of the plan posted online and trying to get feedback on those. So
When do
it'll,
you think that'll be?
I'm not entirely sure. This week, we're actually introducing some of those initial concepts and guidelines to the committees.
Right.
And so Keith, do you want to speak a little bit more to that? As far as timeline? We do have a timeline slide where we're going to talk more about that
Right.
later on in the
Okay.
presentation.
I just wanted to know how I would know that the draft was available to look at.
Yeah, well, as soon as it's available, we'll push that out to the commission.
Okay.
And we also have email blasts, so anyone who's actually signed up for Project Update, they'll get an email blast where they'll be notified automatically that, hey,
Okay.
there's a new posting online, please go and take a look at it. So that's another way that we're keeping people updated and engaged. We'll also post it on our social media, and we'll push it out to our local media sources as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the outreach efforts that we've done in more detail. So this includes project branding, that's that Knack Together website. That includes some of the merch or swag that we put together. One of the most recent things that we've done are these kind of stickers. We also have project T-shirts that have the QR code. So when we're out talking to people, we're wearing these T-shirts, and they can scan the QR code on our sleeve and go directly to the website. We've also done several flyers, posters, cards. I can't tell you how many little stock cards that the Recreation Department has printed and cut out for these events where we've shared with people, and they have a little QR code that you can scan, takes you directly to the website. Email newsletters, we just sent one out today. We send those out regularly, social media posts, and so those just include some of the marketing things that we've done for the project. Some of the events, like I said, Meeting in a Box, we've actually had 11 different submissions or Meeting in a Box submissions on the project website. We've done 7 focus groups. We still have a few to go. We've completed 10 individual interviews. We've had 5 public meetings. We've completed 3 online surveys with over 1,300 responses. We've attended several Man on the Street events and engaged actually 110 individual people. And then we've had 4 community events that we piggyback off of. And we also had a virtual engagement room. So back in September, we had big community-wide meetings where we asked people to come out and do some planning exercises with us. We also duplicated that online. So if you didn't come to the meeting, you could do like an online virtual engagement where you went through and did the same kind of exercises that people in person at the meeting were able to do. So that was another effort that we did to make sure that we were reaching people who wouldn't be available for that in-person meeting. We also have monthly committee meetings for the comprehensive plan and downtown plan. The comprehensive plan committee meets monthly on the second Thursday of every month, and the downtown committee meets monthly on the second Wednesday. This month is a little bit different because the way that the Wednesdays and Thursdays fell. So this week is really the second week, the third week, but the calendar just had an awkward schedule. So we also have subcommittee meetings as needed. So these are smaller groups of those committees who work on special topics, and then they take those back to the larger committees. These are just some images of some of the events that we've been at and some activities. So on the top left, that's that big public meeting that we had for the comprehensive plan. Next to that, you see Dr. Saucedo, I think that's her name, at the Blueberry Festival, handing out fans. We were very popular with the fans because it was a hot day. So we got a lot of contacts from that. We also did a downtown walking tour. The picture on the right, that's from that visioning event where we had a lot of positive feedback and a lot of exciting ideas come forward. On the bottom, on the left, you see that design charrette that was actually at the Cole Art Center where we booked that whole floor, and we had the design team come in and do sketches to really look at what different areas of downtown could be in the future. So looking at ways to improve certain areas, certain blocks, things like that, and then we got feedback from the community. We were at an SFA football game, and again, on the bottom right, that's that Dia de los Muertos event. And these ladies were really excited because the flyer that they were holding actually had their picture on the background from the year before. And so they really liked that. And so we got them to hold the flyer with a picture of themselves. And so that was really fun. And that was a fun event. All right, so products that have been submitted so far. So you had this in your packet as well. The consultant has completed the downtown existing conditions report and the comprehensive plan existing conditions report. And these reports really are one of the most important documents of the process because it provides that background and baseline data that's necessary to help understand what are the city's current conditions and what issues need to be included and addressed in the comprehensive plan process. We also included some draft downtown design sketches that came from that downtown design charrette we had at the Cole Center. And then we have that draft engagement report. That essentially encapsulates everything that we've done to date as far as public engagement. And as we go along, that report will grow and evolve. And at the end, it'll be essentially a snapshot of everything that we've done to make sure that we clearly communicate to the public what we did, who we talked to, and what that data showed. So that's just something additional that we asked for because we wanted to make sure that we had a thoroughly documented engagement process. As far as what's next, so this week, the consultant's actually going to be introducing a draft vision and guiding principles for the downtown and the comprehensive plan to the committees. We'll also be sharing those with the commission and the city council. We'll also be, soon we'll be getting drafts of the future I-69 corridor study, draft policies and implementation strategies to help us figure out how do we implement those guiding principles and that vision. The estimated completion date is late April, early May of 2023. So this is a project timeline. This really is pretty similar to the project timeline that was included in the initial contract that was approved in late January of this year. So initially, the plan adoption was targeted for March, and now we're looking at April. And really, that month delay was something that staff is responsible for because we wanted to push the outreach efforts to September when we knew the students were going to be back in town. So city staff actually made the decision to delay the project engagement until we had the student population and we could make sure that we had as much of a community feedback as we could. So really, we're right on track as far as timeline. We're right on track as far as deliverables. And we are actually, on the slide, it says tentative, but we're actually going to be having a joint workshop with the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council on January 25th, specifically to talk about housing. And so we will have Keith, who's on the call at that meeting, and several other members of the consultant team, and we'll be having basically like a workshop with the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council to talk about our housing needs and come up with some ideas on how to address those, not only for the long term, but in the midterm as well. So I wanted to go through that material because I know there's going to be a lot of questions, and I wanted to give ample opportunity to have any kind of discussion or answer questions from the commission. So with that, I'll conclude staff's presentation and open it up for questions.
Elena,
Yes.
I remember going through this report and thinking downtown on the market summary, do we really have 17 restaurants here in downtown? And what is that? I mean, how is that, the range included in that?
Yeah, so downtown isn't just your brick streets. That downtown actually includes a little bit west of Main Street. And so think about Antipastas.
Right.
Whenever you travel north, like traveling to Fredonia, there's some bed and breakfasts that are actually also open to the
they're
public for
counted,
lunch.
okay.
And so we included all those as well.
Got it. Because I was literally forming a group going, how many antique stores? I'm literally trying to count on a hand.
Yeah.
Very neat. So with this report that came through, what has the staff garnered from all of it? I mean, it's pretty comprehensive in terms of the downtown area.
There's nothing that's a surprise. Whenever you look at the demographics and you look at household income, that's very typical of a college town because they're also including the income of college students that is sometimes zero. So a couple questions that we've gotten is like, is our median household income really that low? And the answer is yes, partially because it includes college students. But there was nothing in there that was really a surprise. It's, whenever we're looking at housing market, economic development, I think the data that you see there is reflective of not only our community, but similarly situated communities, just because of the national effects that we've seen from COVID and supply and demand and things like that as well. But to answer your question about the downtown, Jessica Sowell, she is really heading up the project side as far as the downtown master plan. So I wish she was here. She could probably speak more to that 'cause she's more familiar with that piece, but she wasn't able to join us this evening.
Okay. That's good. I attended a meeting that they had kind of like a sketch design of what downtown could potentially look at
Yeah.
or look like. And I wasn't able to stay the entire time, but I did want to know, in general, the public feedback in all the meetings that you've attended, how they're feeling about it all, how the community is engaged in it, and if there's still momentum and steam, or is it dropped off and declined?
Yeah, well, speaking to the downtown design shred, it was interesting because when we talk to people about downtown and the changes that could be made, I think instinctively, and this is just human nature, people want to talk about, well, we can't do this because of that, or we can't do that because of funding, or we can't, all the reasons why we can't do anything. And so we try to tell people, let's dream big. Let's not think about what we can't do because of A, B, and C. What could we do? What could it be? So that was really exciting to see people like kind of let go of some of those boundaries and some of those restrictions and really think like, oh, if I could have anything, like what would it be? And so we saw some really cool ideas for Festival Park. We saw some really cool ideas for some of these unused alleyways and looking at, can we shut these down and make them like little pedestrian plazas where
Right.
it actually attracts pedestrian activity with lighting and things like that. So it was really cool to see what people came up with once they kind of got past that block of, that limited mindset. And so that was really exciting to
That
see
is
some of the things that
exciting.
came out of it. Yeah.
I mean, one of the examples that I give to people too, in terms of dreaming big or having federal funding, is the town of Center. And Center had federal funding that came in, and they did and redesigned their entire downtown area with lighted areas and pedestrian walkways, and it's completely changed their entire feel of downtown. It's cleaner, it's easier to access in terms of pedestrian traffic and driving traffic.
Yeah.
So federal funding can do a lot.
Yeah.
So-
And what I always tell people is there's never been anything that's ever existed without having a thought about it. And then someone saying it out loud.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing is, like, we have to get these ideas out there, even if they're not feasible today, maybe they are tomorrow in 5 years or 10 years. Sometimes it's all about timing, but having those ideas out there and getting feedback on what if, and then when the opportunity presents itself, being able to act on it. So that was really cool to see people's ideas on what they thought it could be for downtown.
That's very nice.
Could you go into a little more detail about the groups that are harder to reach and how you,
Yes.
which groups those are and how you're going about reaching out to them? And also, did you analyze participation geographically? I'm wondering if my neighborhood and my ward,
Yeah.
how well they participated.
Yes, so whenever, at the end of each survey, there were a number of questions that asked you to provide identifiable information. It asked about your age, it asked about your race, it asked about where you lived geographically. So we actually had a map that broke up the city into different sectors and asked people to identify the area that they were from based on that, so that helped us out. It also asked if they worked in Nacogdoches or lived in Nacogdoches or both, and so that really gave us a good idea of not only the type of people that we were hearing from, but where in the community that we were hearing from them, and if they lived here versus worked here. Because there's a lot of people that work and go to school here, but they live outside the county or they live in adjacent cities. So that was good to see. Some of the traditional hard-to-reach groups are a non-English speaking community where English isn't their first language. Our minority population in general is harder to reach. Also, people that are under 18 or even 18 to 24, that's traditionally a hard-to-reach group. And so what we did when we saw that those numbers were lacking in our responses is we actually reached out to leaders of those groups to help us engage. So we reached out to several African-American pastors in the Southeast and Southwest Ward, and they helped us engage their congregation and some of those other associations. And so we actually saw an immediate bump in our numbers just from that alone, and so that really was effective. We've also been able to engage our local school districts, so looking at the ISD, helping us share information with the parents directly, and that improved our numbers on that side. And then Remy has helped us engage our students even further. He's also a member of the Student Government Association, so that's really helped us plug into that demographic. So anytime that we've seen where we have a shortfall in a group that's representative of our community, we take an extra effort to engage those groups. And that's really what the committees are for, too. The committees are there to help us engage those groups that wouldn't normally come to the table. And so we really challenge them to say, hey, what are you going to do to help us get these numbers and make sure that we're reaching all of the different groups in the community? And they really stepped up and helped us plug into their organizations and contacts to make sure we were getting a representative sample of the community. So those are just a few of the efforts that we did. We also actually went door to door to some of our local Hispanic-owned businesses on the south side of town and put Spanish flyers and posters in their doors and in their business, and that I think helped made an impact. We also posted in the La Lingua Spanish material, and so we tried to take concerted effort to make sure that at least the information was out there for those groups to see.
Has there been any discussion about a vision for South Street?
Specifically not yet, but I'm assuming that we're going to see recommendations for that come out of the plan. But
Thank you.
And question about the Dia de los Muertos, you know, that's engaging the Hispanic community. What was that like? What was the response like?
Yeah.
What were the main questions that were asked?
A lot of people, it was interesting to see a lot of people just not knowing what the Knack Together project was. Well, what is that? So once we told them, they're like, oh, yeah, we want to, you know, we have an opinion on that. And so we were able to just, once we get people just informed about the project, normally it's very easy to get them to engage with us. But yeah, it was interesting. A lot of children, I've never seen a community event that had so much small children at it, and they were so fun. And we actually used the kids to engage the parents. We give them crayons and say, hey, go give this to your mom and dad, and they'd come back. So that was really neat, but a lot of families. And based on that, we were able to see that really in general, our Hispanic population just wasn't as aware of the project as some of our other groups. And so after that, we were like, okay, how can we do more? And so that's when we took our flyers and put them in our Spanish owned businesses. We had a diversity focus group just with the Hispanic community, and they gave us some additional contacts to engage in. And so we'll be using those for future focus groups and reaching out to them to get their direct feedback on some of the drafts that come out of the plan too. So that was really effective because it gave us contacts that we can use in the future too.
That's really good. It's unfortunate it's so late into the game, but
Yeah.
that's okay as long as we're engaging.
It's interesting to see the market demand relative to corporate demand and the proverbial chicken and egg. You know, how do you get one here? You've got to have the housing to get the corporate here, and you need the corporate here to really continue to build out housing and affordable housing. So, and all levels of housing, quite frankly. So,
I'd like to make a comment for Remy. I received your phone call and I thought you were extremely professional and gracious, and I appreciate you on the team in doing this for that because I think it takes calling people to engage. So, good job.
Yeah, he's been on the phone all day.
Good job.
Well, you already RSVP'd.
You RSVP'd.
Yeah.
well, thank you all for putting this together, and I look forward to reading it in depth. It's some good information, up-to-date information.
Yeah, and I encourage you guys to come to the focus groups. You know, we have invited people to participate directly, but we also have a public area where people can come and observe and watch. We don't record those meetings because we want people to feel free to be open and I'm honest, but they are open to the public. So if you haven't been invited directly, I invite you to come and listen, because it's very interesting when you hear the committees talk about these topics and issues, and then you hear the focus groups, people who actually work day to day in the industry. It's very interesting to hear the feedback. And so I do invite you guys to attend those, even if you can't directly participate. You're coming. I think, Lily, are you coming to the housing focus group too?
On Thursday? On the 20...
Wednesday.
I was thinking about it, but I've been still recovering from all this illness.
Oh, okay.
So,
Not to call you out or anything. for this meeting.
It's this Wednesday.
well, I asked
right?
Remy if it was virtual.
Because you had said something about January 25th, and it made me look at my calendar.
Yes,
and make sure it
so
wasn't.
Wednesday at 9:00, we're gonna have a housing focus group at the rec center. That afternoon at 3:30, the downtown committee meeting is having their regular meeting. That evening at 5:30 at the Fredonia Brewery, we're having a meet and greet with the consultant. Thursday morning at 9 a.m., we're having a focus group that covers arts, entertainment, culture. And then Thursday afternoon at 3:30, the comprehensive plan committee is having their regular meeting. January 25th is that joint workshop with the city council and the planning and zoning commission to just talk about housing. Because we've had a lot of projects come up and a lot of requests for development, and so we want to have that conversation sooner rather than later. So that's why we kind of pushed that one to the forefront. But by then, we would have had the focus group with the general community, and we'll be able to use some of that feedback to present to you guys at that joint workshop.
Is it too late to do a meeting in a box?
You can do meeting in a box whenever you want.
And there's already pre-developed questions for that, right?
Yes, ma'am. Now, we closed the portal to accept meeting in a boxes, but I think we're gonna bring that back whenever we get ready to put out drafts of the plan for feedback and allow people to kind of have a meeting in a box about the drafts of the plan. Does that make sense? So, but we had to put a deadline on that feedback so we could, collate it and we could, yes, ma'am. Yeah, but I think in the future, we may be reopening that to get more feedback on the drafts that come out.
Elena, was there anything that surprised you in any of this analyzation from these reports?
No, not really. I was surprised to see how much of like our daytime workforce population we have versus like overall demographics. Our daytime population is like 3 times larger than the actual permanent residents here, which means we really are the county hub. Medical, education, workforce, I mean, we really are the center of all that activity. So yes, our population may be 32,000, but we serve way more people than that. So that's why through all this engagement, we haven't been discounting comments that we've gotten from people that don't live in the city. Because even they don't live here, they work here, they go to school here, their kids go to school here, we're still serving them. They're still essentially residents. So, yeah, that was pretty interesting to see.
That is interesting.
We the lady with the sign variance, her group had some statistics on transit traffic in Nacogdoches during the day, and I mean, it was 3 times the population at times. It was pretty substantial.
It's the same for Lufkin, because they're the hub of the county. So, yeah, during the day, there's just a surge of population activity during the daytime, and those
Right
are,
down North Street, you'll see it.
I was gonna say,
yeah.
get out during the day, you'll figure
You'll
that
see
out.
it.
And that's obviously being taken account to for transportation, and that's good.
I realize this is something that would be very difficult to plan for, but is the arrival of University of Texas staff and students and is there any way to quantify that at this point? Because I've heard that a lot of people are gonna be moving here from
Yeah.
Austin. I don't know if that's true or not.
No.
But
Well, I think is it 2019 or 2018, there was an economic impact study that SFA worked on that basically said for every 1,000 new students, it's like a $10 million economic impact for Nacogdoches. And I could be a little off on those numbers, but basically talking about, the ratio of new students to how that impacted local housing market, sales market. So that's as far as I think we've come. It's such a new announcement that we could quantify that. We know it's going to be a huge impact, but what that looks like yet, we're not entirely sure. But we're excited.
How do you know that's going to be a huge impact? Just curious.
Well, just looking at the proposal, if they really can do and deliver some of those things that are in that proposal, as far as just the increase in new students, that in and of itself, because you talk about 4,000 new students. 4,000 times 10 million, that's a huge impact, not only to our local economic market, but what I think about is where are they going to live? That's the first thing that comes to my mind, because we've already been told we're short on housing, specifically multifamily. And so without SFA actually building new apartments for their students, I think about where we're going to put them. But there are a lot of opportunities, because a lot of universities, including actually, Texas A&M is a good example, but I'm sure University of Texas has done this too, where they'll do public-private partnerships for student housing. And there's so much of that area around there where there's an opportunity to have some sort of project or have some sort of new housing development. That's what I think about. And so it's a little scary, but it's exciting too. So maybe that'll.
Why would 4,000 more people come to school here just because we're affiliated with some other college?
Well, it's not just that, it's about the programs. So when you talk about association with other universities, they offer a lot more programs and different degree programs and things like that. And a lot of people will follow a school because of the branding and the name, because it carries weight. So it's a multifaceted thing, but yeah, when you think about how many people go to Texas A&M just because it's Texas A&M, you know what I mean? So it does have some marketing value, and it does open the doors, because they have not only a state presence, but UT has a federal presence they can open doors that we don't currently have access to, not only with programming, but funding. And so there's going to be so many more opportunities for us to access educational opportunities for future funding that we can't today, because right now, I think I heard them talk about it at Rotary, that right now we have one person helping us lobby at the state level for funding and projects and things like that. UT as a whole team. So when you talk about representation and putting our name out there and marketing and things like that, it's a whole new world. So it's very exciting.
So they're projecting 4,000 new students in their proposal.
I think I saw a number that was like 4,000 in the first so many years, but again, those are just proposals. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't read it verbatim, but it was a pretty big number.
That's more than I knew, so thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know. It would be interesting to see how much of that's online as opposed to in person. There's some, so I think there's a lot to remain to be seen there. But
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about putting us out there, I think SFA has the only forestry school. And so that makes me excited, because we can use those resources and take off some of that administrative burden that we have now, and maybe UT can help us market that to other demographics and other areas and help us grow what we already have. So that's exciting too. I think a lot of people from other states probably don't even know that there's a forestry school in Texas. So that's exciting too.
Yep.
Right, any other
uncharted territory
questions?
for us, for sure.
Yes,
Well, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
What next?
All right, next we have,
So we're moving on to,
open
I thought
forum
Ron
and
was gonna
then
talk.
minutes.
I was getting all excited. All right, we'll move, open session, open forum, in addition to public comment on agenda items, excuse me. The commission offers an open forum whereby citizens may comment on governance issues over which the city of Nacogdoches has domain. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, members of the commission shall not discuss, deliberate, or make decisions on topics not posted as an agenda item. Speakers should address all remarks to the commission and limit your remarks to no more than 3 minutes. And there's nobody here. So we'll move to the consent agenda. Has everyone had a second to go over the meeting minutes?
I have a correction on the meeting minutes.
Okay.
On page 3, it said that Commissioner Carroll abstained, but she did not abstain.
She voted no.
She voted no. Oh.
That is correct. How do I do this on this one? Will you make it, or do we mark it out and write it in?
Make a motion to approve the minutes with the revisions noted by Commissioner Forbes, and then we can write it in.
Okay. Is there any other comments? You made a motion. You want to make a motion on that, Maggie, formally?
Sure, I make a motion to accept the minutes with that revision.
I second that.
There's, that's it. Oh, yeah, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Okay. I'm not writing it
Oh
either.
boy, new, fresh faces, fresh meat.
Moving into the regular agenda, consideration, discussion, possible, is this right? Yes, action items are removed from the consent agenda by commission. We did that, so we'll move into 6B. Consider request for an exception to zoning ordinance, section 118-429, commercial sites with residential adjacency, to waive the requirement for screening fence for a non-residential development adjacent to residentially zoned properties for Lot 5, City Block 70, located at 4715 North Street. This request has been submitted by Alter Group, case file EXC2022-01.
Thank you, Chairman. Juan Paulette, Planning Technician. Before I get started, I want to give a little background on this provision to the ordinance. It's fairly new and it's meant to encourage tree preservation. Prior to this exception, being adopted, developers were required to install a wooden fence requiring them to clear that section of land. If developers wanted to keep the trees, instead of building a fence, they would have to request a variance from the Zoning Board of Adjustments. This exception makes it easier to keep the existing trees and promotes the preservation of the existing vegetation. This exception was adopted in 2020 and is the only the second exception that has been heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The first one was in 2020 by the Plant Shed Nursery on the corner of East Austin and Appleby Sand Road. As stated, this property is located at 4715 North Street, directly across the street from the big Walmart on North Street. The property is approximately 1.9 acres, and it has approximately 120 feet of street frontage and is 700 feet deep. As you can see in this slide, this aerial map, about 500 feet of the back half of the property is undeveloped and heavily wooded. The property is currently developed as a medical clinic and is vacant. Section 118-429 of the ordinance states that any commercial properties that are next to residentially zoned properties need to have a solid screening wall, such as a 6-foot tall wooden fence, and be constructed on the non-residential property next to the residential property line in order to screen views and wind-blown trash and debris. In addition, a 10-foot wide landscape buffer with one tree for every 25 feet of shared property line is required. There are two exceptions to this rule can be granted by the P&Z Commission with the city planner approval or recommendation. The first is the required fence or wall that is next to The first is the required fence or wall that is next to a natural feature such as a creek or a floodplain or floodway. The other is if there's an existing vegetation that is at least 6 feet high, non-transparent year-round, blocking noise, glares, and other nuisances. The property is zoned B2 General Business, and the applicant is planning on demoing the current medical clinic and constructing an oil change service center. The proposed site plan complies with the conditions of the B2 General Business District, including the preservation of the large trees and dense vegetation located in the back of the property that abuts the single-family property to the north and west sides. Additionally, the single-family property to the north is undeveloped and heavily wooded, and the single-family property to the west is the Lakeside City Park. All of the commercial improvements and activities are located on the east side of the property, away from the residentially zoned areas. The shape of the lot is narrow and deep, and with the back 2/3 of the lot being undeveloped and heavily wooded. The applicant is proposing to preserve the entire back half of the property in lieu of the required screening fence. The proposed construction will encompass the same footprint as the current medical office and will not encroach on the existing vegetation. So here's some pictures of the looking straight ahead on the property. You can see the existing medical clinic. And here's some adjacent commercial properties to the north and south on the same side of the road. And just some street views looking south and north on along North Street. And here's the back half of the property behind the clinic, and you can see that dense vegetation and trees that the applicant is planning on preserving. So of the two criteria that need to be met in order to be considered for the exception to required fences, staff finds that the criteria that states that the existing vegetation be at least 6 feet high, have a minimum of 15 feet in width, and be non-transparent year-round has been satisfied. Staff has inspected the site and finds that the request provides more than sufficient natural landscaping and screening to the adjacent residential property. The required 15-foot tree preservation area, along with the other mature trees covering 2/3 of the western portion of the property, will be preserved and provide a visible separation between the commercial activities of this site and the residential area. With that being said, staff recommends approval of this request. This concludes staff's presentation and will answer any questions of the commission.
Juan and, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say thank you, Juan.
Thank you, Juan. Good job.
Thank you.
Very good job, Juan.
Thank you.
Good to hear you speak. And I have a question in terms of if this is approved and the vegetation is cut in lieu of a fence, if they decided to go plow it down, what are we doing about it? Ordinance? Are they gonna be fined? How's that work?
Well, if they cut it, they would have to put up the wooden fence along with a 10-foot landscape buffer and plant new trees or preserve those trees. But they would have to put up a wooden fence.
Who would police that? The code enforcement, or how would you?
Well, if they made improvements to the site, they would have to submit a site plan, and then if they wanted to take a portion of that away, but maybe keep the 15-foot landscape buffer, then we would have to revisit it with the Planning and Zoning Commission, just to make sure that there's adequate vegetation. Because if you leave just the 15-foot landscape buffer, the trees might not be adequate. There might be just short trees, and it might need the requirement of an additional few feet to provide that buffer.
For my own ignorance, does the landowner have to get permits or do anything to clear out property?
As of today, no, but we are working on developing a development permit just for clearing and grading. For this particular site, we will be inspecting the property after they construct everything and before we let them open, so we can confirm, all right, you preserve this area like you said you were going to, and in the future, if we find that they've gone back and cleared it for some reason, we'll bring it back to the commission for review and consideration. So there is some policing there as especially on the front end when they're trying to open after construction. So, and then any additional improvements, any actual buildings or parking, they'll have to submit site plans and permits for that.
Yeah, my concern's not necessarily with this one, and maybe policing's a poor choice of words, but ensuring that it maintains the relationship or the agreement is maintained, so. Interesting, okay, thank you.
So this preservation is a condition of approval of the permit. So if they violate it, they're in violation of their permit. And there's ways to enforce that one way or the other, whether that's coming back to the Planning and Zoning Commission and getting alternative reviewed or putting a hold on their permits.
So you guys jumped to the chase here, but, so what we would be voting on would be based on this figure that you're showing, and they would have to preserve what's shown here on this figure? I mean, how exactly is that worded and?
Well, the applicant is proposing to keep the entire back half of the property as is, because the footprint of the oil change center is the same.
But if he
And so-
sold it next year, I just want to make sure that whatever we vote on, we know that if he sold it next year or came up with another business idea, that it would have, we would have to revisit any changes to the part that he's previously preserved.
Yeah, so this will follow the property regardless of ownership. It's really project specific,
Okay.
not property owner specific. So even if the property changes hands, it'll still apply.
It's just a little confusing because the development with the apartments on Pearl and Austin, he said, well, I'm not gonna do anything back there, but that wasn't good enough, right, for the zone change, but I guess it is good. So we couldn't write that in to the zone change, but here we are writing it in because it's an exception. Is that right?
Yes, and they're seeking city approval, to permit construction. So that's our carrot and stick.
Okay. Can I ask some other just kind of background questions for my own education? I'm just curious, I know there's no zoning category for city parks or municipally owned property, but shouldn't there be? Because I don't really, and I don't know where the park boundaries are. I would like to see the park boundaries.
We have a slide showing the park boundaries right here.
Okay. And,
Basically all along the the eastern side of Pearl Street.
so a developer could come in and do R2 on that property to the due north behind 4721.
It looks landlocked.
It's R1.
I'm sorry. What? Say,
R2.
It's R2.
no, it's R2.
Okay.
So if they could access it, somebody could come in and, how come that lot doesn't have a number on it? Who does that lot belong to?
It does over here, Lot 6, Block 70, on the,
Oh, okay. Oh, right.
And the same owners own that one other little piece to the
I see,
to the
yeah.
northeast,
okay, so that's their
and that
entrance into that property.
connects to North Street.
Okay. Just curious how they got in.
So that could be developed in the future as R2. And so what about the zoning for parks? Because I went on the zoning maps and looked at the other parks, and some of them are heavy industrial, and how does,
Yeah, so a lot of our zoning that we have today is zoning that we've had since like the 70s, and before some of these parks were even developed. And so there is no zoning for city parks. City parks are allowed in all districts, and so there's no need to change the zoning for city park because it's allowed everywhere. So there is no, zoning designation for parks because
it did trigger this.
because it's based on the zoning, not the land use.
Because it's R2, not because it's a park.
Right, I
Yeah.
get that, but if it was a park, then maybe it wouldn't have triggered it. Because what
Correct.
triggered it was the fact that you had R2 adjacent to this plot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just seems like it's.
It's got the,
Oftentimes,
I
parks are
understand your
zoned,
point, but
yeah.
it's-
Most of the time, parks are zoned ag or single family. And agriculture also triggers the screening requirement. So it's very uncommon to see like an industrial area actually developed as a park, but it does happen.
well, this sheet shows the park being R2.
Right.
Maybe you said
but
that, okay.
I'm saying, why? I mean, does this mean that our parks could just be converted back to R2 at any time or into heavy
The city
industrial?
sold the land.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
but
so,
why,
I'm
why
So-
would the city
yeah.
do that?
So in order
Well,
to abandon,
because they can. That's why.
I can't
I mean,
imagine
what if,
that they would sell the land
4,000
and think that's
students
a
show
good.
up and need a place to live, and we look at this park and say, hey, maybe we should.
You're a pessimist. I don't think the city would sell a park.
well, and it takes more than that. In order to abandon a public park, you have to have an election. So it's not just
Oh,
a
is
city
that-
council decision, it's a community decision, yeah.
That's fixed, I mean, it's,
Okay,
It-
well, I just,
It
and
takes a
also,
lot.
I wanted to see the boundary, and I
Yes, ma'am.
couldn't find the boundary on there. so-
Yes, city
Anyway.
parkland is coveted in that way. It's very hard, to change that. Once it is city parkland, it does require a citywide election.
Okay.
thank you.
Also, I was wondering, the ordinance says non-transparent. How exactly is that defined, and who decides on that?
So,
What's
we talk about
transparent?
non-transparent, we're looking at opacity, right? Like, can you see through it? And so that's why we put in the requirement for this to come before this board, so it wasn't just staff making the decision in a vacuum. And so, because non-transparent can mean one thing for Lily versus me versus you, and so that's why we wanted to bring it to the board for review and consideration in an open forum, because we wanted to make sure that what they're showing meets the definition for non-transparent for you guys as well, because our ordinance doesn't define it specifically, because it can be vague based on the circumstances. Essentially, can you see through it or not? Does it block noise and light? And so we find that what they're proposing is more than sufficient for that. I don't have a definition for you. Typically, when we look at opacity, it's like 85, 90%, visibility. But beyond that, I don't have a hard and fast like definition for you. But rule of thumb is, can you see through it? Can light shine through it? You know, sound. And when we went out there, you couldn't see, you couldn't hear.
Deciduous trees, you know, because
Yeah.
Wintertime.
But nothing's changing right now. They're gonna knock down a building and put another one up.
Yeah.
So,
They're just gonna preserve it and leave it in its natural state.
Yeah.
It's kind of unusually long lot where most of the activity is
Right.
right along North
Right.
Street and the rest
I
of the
can
property
see where it'd
is-
be, obviously it would be valid if, you know, if they try to develop that lot, block 70, but, you know, cross that bridge when you get to it and ensure that they don't do anything different than what the land is, so.
Yeah.
It's been approved for, so.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, well, anything else for you, sir? We'll open it up to public comment. Hey, does anybody, do you have any questions or anything you want to ask questions? All right, any council discussion? We'll close public comment. Any council discussion, further discussion?
I'd prefer trees over fence lines anyways, if it was thick enough. There was a question I had, we had voted for that lot right on Main Street in front of the feed lot, or the feed store, not the feed lot. There was a whole conversation about density of trees and as a fence line and natural barrier as opposed to a fence. Do you remember that, Lena? It was for the trailer park, where they were gonna build an indoor-outdoor stage area. Brent Ivy.
Yes.
Oh, Brent Ivy,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
So that was a specific use permit, and so a condition of that specific use permit was for them to preserve that tree line area. Otherwise, they would have to tear it down and install a fence and
Right.
plant new trees.
So similar in nature.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I'm all for it. So whenever we're done, I'd like to make a motion.
Anybody else, any other comments? By all means.
I'd like to make a motion to approve it.
I'll
Second.
second it. You beat me to it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say no. So carries. We'll move to 7, discussion of possible action on future agenda items. Planning and zoning member may inquire about a subject for which notice has been given, not been given, excuse me. A statement of specific factual information or the recitation of existing policy may be given. Any deliberation shall be limited to a proposal to place a subject on an agenda for subsequent meeting. Any future agenda recommendations?
Just reminding the group about the joint workshop we're gonna have with City Council on January 25th to talk about housing. Also, we submitted our application for our group planning, board for American Planning Association. It took us a while because we were going to try to create city emails for the commission, but it was gonna be over $160 a year for each one of you. So we're like, well, we're gonna let you use the emails that you submitted for your correspondence and your communications that you get today. So whatever you use to receive agenda packets, that's what you'll be using for your login information for your American Planning Association membership. I'm just waiting on confirmation from APA that they've approved it. So as soon as we get that, I'll share it with you guys, and you guys will be able to log in, create passwords, and then access all the information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You said January 25th for the workshop?
Yes, ma'am.
If nothing else, wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever it may be, but a safe holiday, and be safe, and
Same
Thank
to
you.
you.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas to
We'll
everybody.